There we go. And now we are recording. Once again, this is Amalia from the Ministry of ANS. We are recording this class, so by having your camera and microphone on, you're giving us permission to record. So we are so thankful for Caera coming here to teach us spinning tonight. We are going to get started in just a minute. First, I just need to share with you quickly the Society Bullying and Harassment Policy, which is a requirement for all society gatherings. So I'm going to hit screen share now and show that. Here we go. All right, so I'll just quickly read this out. Can everyone see this slide? So the slide says, the SCA prohibits harassment and bullying of all individuals and groups. Participants engaging in behavior are subject to appropriate sanctions. If you are subjected to harassment, bullying, or retaliation, or if you become aware of anyone being harassed or bullied, contact the Seneschal, president of the SCA, or your kingdom's foreign ombudsman. All right. And with all that housekeeping out of the way, Caera, go ahead and take it away.
Nice. Thank you. And thank you everybody for showing up this evening. I'm super excited. If you have any questions at any point, just type them in the chat and I will be sure to pause and answer them. I tend to lose my flow pretty easily, so otherwise. A little bit of background about where I'm coming from. I've been spinning for about 15 years, so a while. And I have my first yarn. I suggest keeping your first yarn because you'll remember how far it is that you have come. As you are practicing and practicing and practicing, do not be afraid to use said yarn. I am the worst at doing that or remembering to do that, but you know, it's your most recently spun yarn is going to be better than when you started. It's okay. Because when you put it into something, nobody's going to know anyways. So, so the idea of spinning is simply to take fiber and twist it together so it becomes string or yarn or thread. Thread is just really thin yarn. And rope is really thick yarn, usually more made out of plants. If you are just starting out, I recommend wool because it has a nice length of fibers. It's called the staple length. I'll talk about that in a minute. But it also has some grip to it, so it's not going to be sliding out of your hands everywhere as well. There's lots of places you can get it. Two of the places that came to mind was Webb's. They do have a brick and mortar, but it's also just yarn.com. That's their website. And the other one is just escaped my brain. I'll think of it later. But also Etsy's got lots and lots of people who are selling handcrafted spindles and hand-dyed yarns. If you start looking on the internet, you search for drop spindles, you look for hand-dyed yarn, you look for spinning fiber, it'll come up. Don't you worry. You got a farm near you? Awesome. They may do shearings and sell some of that too.
Is there a particular type of wool that you recommend? We have a question in the chat.
Excellent. Good question. There's types of wool, just like there's breeds of sheep and breeds of dogs and breeds of cats, that sort of thing. I started learning on Corriedale. That's what this is. BFL or Blue-Faced Leicester, I've heard is a really good one for people to play with. Honestly, there isn't a bad one. I would, though, say some of them are prone to felting more than others. So, for example, I have this Icelandic. Icelandic loves itself. And it gets hard to draft, meaning pull it apart, not apart, but what you want the fibers to do is is slip to thin out. Because if I twisted, since I'm going to explain that anyways, if I was just to twist this up, okay, yeah, this could be yarn, sure. But I don't usually use yarn that thick. So drafting is the process of thinning it out. Well, because this is harder to work with because it likes to felt to itself. So maybe it's not a great beginner fiber. If you have any questions, like that you could ask this seller as well. You can ask me. Ask a spindle to send you in the right direction. Generally, though, you're not going to go too wrong. If you are, obviously, we're all kind of interested in historical spinning. I would start with just some fiber that you find, named it's being sold as spinning fiber for now, because some of the more historical breeds sometimes get a little more challenging, like the Icelandic, for example. I hope that answered your question. Like I said, I ramble. So drafting is just, let me show you this too. When you're looking for roving, it'll come in several different varieties. It'll come in bats, which can look like this, or it might be rolled up. If these are really, really tiny, they might be called rollags. It's basically this. And this is called roving. It's all basically the same thing. This is all the same Icelandic. All right, so it doesn't really matter necessarily. I'll show you how to draft out of all of them. Was there another question that had come up? Okay. So if you do happen to have some roving or some fluff and you'd like to play along, excellent. Like I said, this is not going to work very well. So I'm going to use a bit of this. So this is big and fat and fluffy and glorious, but it's way too much for my hands to handle. So I'm going to just split this off and just use part of it. And all drafting is thinning the yarn or thinning the fibers out to make it the thickness that you want. So like I said before, if you're going to twist this into yarn, I mean, you could do it. It's going to be really thick. I'm not going to use it. I need to thin it out. So how we do that, if you take your hand, and it doesn't matter which you're more comfortable with, I'm right-handed, so I use my right hand because I have a little bit more tension control with this, a hand and arm. You're going to kind of use your hand as a paddle almost. So the four fingers go against the pad of your thumb down here, and your thumb kind of goes against your pointer finger. So you're just kind of gripping it like this. All right, and you just flat palm it, and then with your other hand, pull out over here, and you pull apart gently. You see right there in the center where it got a lot thinner? I don't want it to get thinner than that, so I'm going to grab it right there. And pull gently again, and see how it's thinning out right here. So I'm going to scooch up and pull gently again. Now I'm starting to lose it right there. So I'm trying to just thin this out a little bit. And you can see it's a lot thinner. So if I compress this together, already we're getting a thinner yarn. That's drafting. One thing that you need to be aware of when you're drafting is your staple length. No worries, there's no staples. What a staple length is how long your fiber is. So if you just take a little tuft, little pinch off one end, right, this is going to be hard to see, and you hold end to end and just kind of straighten it out, that is your staple length. If your hands are closer than this and you're trying to pull, you're basically trying to pull both ends of the same piece of hair. It's not going to slip off anything. You need to have your hands that much farther apart. That's why people find this very relaxing, is because it forces you to open up. You're not here. You have to be here. You have to open up. You have to relax. So, whoop, come here. There we go. So again, if you four finger paddle, and so see how far back my hand is? Let's do this. There we go. I'm going to pull. Now you can move your hands closer. They just can't be any closer than that staple length. Or you have to have this hand super, super open. You're barely holding it. So it's got just enough to tug against, but those ends of those fibers will still be able to move. That's the idea. Okay, so whether you're on a spindle or if you're on a spinning wheel, this is probably the hardest portion to get right, but B, once you get this right, you're good to go. The first time I ever sat down at a wheel, I'd been spindle spinning for about a year. They didn't believe me that I'd never spun on a wheel before because I knew how to draft. You know, if you know how to draft, you're gonna get it pretty quick. Okay, so my fiber started off like this, all right, and it is now, see how you can just see how less dense this is. And so if you're playing along, I would like you to now do, everybody got some drafted fiber? You tried it? I know. Heather's an old pro at this. I know her. She's a dog. All right. So we're going to make yarn right now. We are what, 10 minutes into class? Excellent. We're going to make yarn right now. So you're going to hold a length in your hands. You're going to pinch one end, all right? And with the other hand, you're going to twist, 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 twist. Just keep twisting. Just keep twisting. Just keep, okay. You can also do this along, I can't show you this, on your knee or your person. If you roll that along, that's actually how they make cordage. It's a technique to making cordage. You rolling it that way too. It's a little different, but it's the same idea. Okay, you're twisting, 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 twisting. Notice I have all the twist between my fingers. There is no twist down here. These two fingers right here are holding all that twist back. If I let go here, all of that twist is going to run up into this drafted fiber. If you are in the middle of spinning and you try to draft and you can't, and you notice that there is some twist in the stuff that you're trying to draft, that might be why you can't draft it. Because when you twist it, it locks in place. All right, so we've got this nice twisted piece of yarn. This is a single. What I'm going to do is just put my hand in the middle and roll it around my hand so that I can pinch the other end as well. Okay, so now I basically just have a loop around my hand. I'm going to hold the middle and then let this twist up, and it's going to want to twist the opposite way of the way we twisted. You now have a 2-ply yarn. Congratulations, yarn spinners, you've made your yarn. That's all you need. Okay. That's the idea of spinning. We just want to do that for really long lengths. Any questions so far? Okay, cool. Yeah. All right. If you're in research or whatever, if you're looking at something and they talk about 1-ply, 2-ply, 3-ply, et cetera, if you take a length and twist it, this is a 1-ply. They just twisted it, and you can wash it, and it will set in its ways, kind of like if you have wet hair and you braid it up and you let it sit there and dry for a while and you take it out, it's all wavy. You basically just set your hair. All right, so this is a single. If you do the same thing to another piece of yarn in the same direction, okay, so basically when you're making a 2-ply yarn, you always they have to be in the same direction. So these are both twisted this way. Plying is twisting them together in the opposite direction. Okay, and there you go. Now my hair is also yarn. This is a rope braid, by the way. So that's the whole process of making yarn. When we were twisting that up, so I could make yarn this length, but we need to make longer lengths. So we use spindles. You can also use wheels, of course. Wheels are definitely period. That's its own class. And the types of spindles are their own class. But I have a high whirl, I have a low whirl. They can be super, super fancy. They can be a square of wood on a dowel, and that's literally it. They used to use rocks, whatever. It's basically just a weight to keep the spinning momentum going. That's kind of the idea. All right, so you have your drafted fiber. And you can, so what I would suggest when you're beginning is to pre-draft your fiber. All right, it just makes it that much easier, so you only have to concentrate on one thing at a time. Okay, so I have some pre-drafted fiber. The other thing I would suggest when you're starting out is to use what's called a leader. It's a way of kind of pre-setting your spindle with a starter. So all you have to worry about is attaching your yarn and going. I'm going to use my very first yarn for this purpose. So, and I'm going to actually do this. If anybody's weaving out there and is thinking, well, you know, I'd love to use my hand spun and weaving, excellent. As long as you hear this snap, when you snap it apart, you can use it for weft, or for warp. You can use anything for weft. But as long as it snaps, you can use it for warp. So take your piece of string, and what you're going to want to do, you can tie this right on if you like, or I like to wrap one end around quite a lot. That's all I'm doing. I'm just wrapping. And then bring this up. Now there's no notch on this spindle. It's okay. If you twist it a couple of times around this top stem, it'll stick. And there you go. You're ready and set to go. The method I suggest you use is park and draft. So that means that we've drafted. We're going to spin, we're going to park it, and we're going to draft some more. If you are already pre-drafting, you don't necessarily have to stop and draft because you've already drafted ahead of time. So, but what we're going to do is I'm going to hold the end of my leader. I suggest, again, you use wool yarn if you happen to have it. Cotton is just going to kind of slide right off. There's no teeth. There's nothing really to hold it on. So if you got something, it's got some feel to it. If you have a felted piece of something, that totally works. Hold it, just pretend it's part of it. You know, there's no end, there's no beginning. It just kind of lives there. And take your spindle and give it a flick. It's like you're snapping, almost. Give it a flick. What you can do too, if you want to just twist it by hand, you can do that. It's going to take a while. And so I have built up quite a lot of twist. You can see this. There's a lot of twist in here. It's starting to kink up on itself. So what I'm going to do now, this is the park bit. You can stick this between your knees. You can stick it on your arm and your armpit, whatever you'd like to do. Again, this is all twisted. This is not. I'm going to transfer this here. I want the twist to go this far. So I'm going to pinch this here. I don't want this going any further. I'm going to let go. See how that twist just ran right up? All right. And you will get better at gauging whether your yarn needs more twist or not in it. I think we can go a little bit further. So I'm just going to kind of scooch this down here a little bit. I'm going to transfer the pinch, go a little bit further. I'm going to draft this out a little bit. See, I can draft this because there's no twist in it. If I let the twist run up, I'm not going to be able to. This right here, I cannot draft. Oh, you see that? There we go. I can't draft this anymore because the ends are stuck in the twist. These are locked. This isn't going to draft anymore. This out here will draft. So I'm going to put my pinch there, let go. And now see how it wants to kink up down here? I want that twist to come up here. So what I need to do is pull gently, and that will even out the twist. That's why we have to keep this all under tension. Notice I didn't scrunch this back up again because it's all going to kink up. You need to keep it under tension, and that will keep the twist where you want it. So we'll undo this, wrap it onto the stick. As we get closer, again, wrap it around up here and onto the hook. And we'll do it again. And this is the part where you would park, draft out a little bit more, you know, okay. And so you want to build up more twist. Adds a lot of twist. Stop. Pinch. Let go. This is always the magic part. Okay, sketch up a little bit more. There you go. Any questions with this so far? Thoughts, ideas, concerns, suggestions?
So we had a question if you're going clockwise or anti-clockwise.
Excellent question. I am at this point going clockwise. Interestingly, a lot of plants grow counterclockwise. So you'll find, especially more South America, you find kind of myths and legends about spinning things counterclockwise and that sort of thing. You can spin clockwise or counterclockwise, whichever is comfortable for you. Remember, if you're going to ply, it has to be then spun the opposite direction to flow together. Fun fact, we don't normally call it clockwise and anti-clockwise. Spinners usually call it S or Z. And how you can remember which way is which is if you're looking at the yarn. Let me see if I can find a spiraled piece here. There we go. This is a nice spiraled piece right there. As I'm looking at this, and it doesn't matter. The nice thing is it's not going to change its direction, whether you look at it right side up or upside down. I can see that this is going this way. If you think about the middle part of a Z or an S, that is the slant that tells you. Okay, so this looks like the middle slant of an S, and so this is an S twist single. All right, now I did see a question come up, or a comment or something.
Yeah, Daniel, was that a question or a comment?
Mostly a comment. You don't want to spin the first length clockwise and then the next length counterclockwise.
Awesome, thank you.
That you don't want to spin this one clockwise and then the next one counterclockwise. Yeah. Because you will basically be undoing all of the things that you have already done. And if you do that, the worst thing that's going to happen is your spindle will drop. I am the queen of that because I constantly forget. If you forget too, what you can do is hold your spindle and watch which way it goes. Then stop it and spin it the other way. Because what it wants to do is untwist your work. So if you ever forget, that's what you can do. Just, oh, that's not the way we want to go. We want to spin the other way. All right. So as you get more and more comfortable with this, you can twist this and then draft and let the yarn or let the twist run up. Catch the spindle as it's whirring around and give it another flick. See how that slowed down? You have to stop it and kick it forward again. You will, again, this takes a long time, but you're going to start to recognize the vibrations like in your pinky finger and your ring finger. And you're going to notice, oh, this is slowing down. I have to give it another kick around. So again, this is all about practice. 90% of this is practice. The basics of it is pretty simple. If you're going to use a low whirl spindle, something like this, and you don't have that nice little hook, that's okay. You can still use a piece of string as a leader. There are ways where you don't have to use a leader. The nice thing about this is you can actually tie it down here too, if you want. I'm just gonna pressure wrap it. And you bring it up. And how you secure it to this, sometimes there's a notch in there as well, is you're going to make a half hitch. The easiest thing to do is you make a loop. That's it. So again, just making a loop there. The only trick is you have to make sure that that longer length of string is going to be on the underside. So when you pull it tight and pull up, it's kind of caught there. Because if you do it the other way, it's just going to completely undo itself and just wrap itself around the stick one more time. That's it. So if you want to do 2 to make sure it's secure, sorry, that's fine. And there you go. And it works the same way. Questions about high whirl, low whirl spindles? Or any spindles?
We had a comment that someone's spindle does not want to keep spinning.
They don't. Absolutely not. Physics is working against you. Because all of that twist that you're putting in the yarn, that's why you flick it, you snap it. Because the twist that you're putting in the yarn will at some point become too much because remember, you are making this spin in this way clockwise. But all that twist is going, oh, but I want to go back to the way I was and trying to undo it. And there's the only force that's keeping it in the direction you started is how much force you put into that snap to begin with. So it will start to slow down and go the other way. So if you notice that it's stopping, that it's starting to slow down and go the other way, that's okay. Just stop it. Get yourself some more fiber and start pushing it or snapping it. You can just roll it between your fingers, just like a snap. Let me see if I can get the direction on it. Just like a snap. But notice I'm always catching this because if I just let this go, it's going to start spinning in the opposite direction. I know it's really hard to see on a spinning thing which way it's going. That whole time, this was going opposite of the way I wanted. So you're forcing the yarn to do what you want. When you're done with your length, you can push it off onto a stick. There we go. I happen to have a double pointed knitting needle that I just held against the end of a spindle and just slid the whole thing right onto this. So now it's sitting there. And you can make 2 of them and put them together. And of course I left the box that I made, but you can just poke 2 holes in a little box and have it sit there. And you've got one end here and you take the other end and you twist them together that way. You can roll it into each one into a ball and pull it off that way. You can have them both sitting in your pocket or 2 different bags. Or you could also take those 2 and roll them together in its own. It's called a plying ball. And then pull and twist that up together. They used to take 2 different balls or 3 or whomever, put them in a pail, and then string up the ends up over a nail over the door frame and then back down and sit there and spin those together so you have a bit of tension going. There's lots and lots and lots of different ways that you can get them twisted together. The South America, there's there's a plying bracelet. There's a way you can wrap it around your hand and your finger and you push it back onto your wrist. And so you basically have this big chunky bracelet until you've plied all your yarn. Don't do that if you plan on doing anything else until the plying ball is done. Just saying. I know from experience. But you can also put it into a center pull ball so that you have the middle and the outside, and you can ply those together. And actually on that stick, if you plan it right when you first start and put your tail here, put your tail someplace that you can find it, not on the inside, but further down, you can take that tail and you can take your end, pull that off, and now you've got, you know, applying ball. Another neat type of spindle that is designed to do that is a Turkish spindle. So this is designed for you to be able to take off the legs. I thought I'd done this before. Apparently not. That's okay, I'll break the yarn. So this is designed to take this off the main stick, and you're able to pull the legs out. If you didn't absolutely strangle the thing when you started. Nice job. There we go. And so I've got my outside, and there is an inside, except that I snapped it off as I was trying to pull it. This was for fun and practice anyways. There you go. So you can take the inside yarn and the last bit that you spun, and you can start plying them together.
We had a question in the chat. How much twist do you want to have?
That's a great question. As much as you need. What I mean by that is if you're trying to make a soft, fuzzy, light, fluffy yarn, you may not want as much. You want enough to hold it together. And maybe a little bit more. If you are making thread, you might want that a lot tighter. Or if you are making something that needs to wear heavily, so like if you're making gloves or if you're making socks, you want to spin it tighter, because the tighter it is, the harder it is for it to break apart. Think of just a tiny bundle of sticks. You know, you get 3 together, you get 2 together and you snap them pretty easy. You get 5 together, it's harder to snap apart. It's the same kind of thing. You want it to be somewhere between not falling apart and not completely twisting on itself, just holding it there. As long as you're somewhere in that zone, you're perfect. It depends on the application. If you're weaving with it, if you're making a warp, you might want it stronger than if you are trying to make a, I don't know, some silk stocking or some fine wool stockings for the king. You know, you might want to spin that a little bit softer and gentler, because it will have a more gentle, soft feel. So somewhere between falling apart and twisting up on itself. That's a great question. And it's one that's you will learn an idea of how much twist you want to give it. When you're plying, you generally tend to want to have that twist at a 45-degree angle, unless you have another thought in mind for it. So that's called a balanced yarn. You spun it, and then it's got just enough twist to be counterbalanced. It's actually not the same. There's a little bit less ply twist than there is single twist. But again, it's a lot of feel. You can get very, very scientific about this. Very scientific. I'm not that person. 2 things that I would, this is my favorite spinning person ever, is Abby Frankmont. She learned in South America. This is a book that she wrote a couple years ago. It's called Respect the Spindle. It's got a whole bunch of different spindles from all over the world. And she goes step by step through how to spin as well. And there's lots of different ways to hold your fiber and hold your fluff and all this sort of stuff, and spinning with a distaff and spinning, you know, with it tucked up in your sleeve and spinning with it draped over your wrist. And there's lots and lots of different ways technically of going about it. There's different spindles. There's different types of things. Like I said, you can spin with a rock. I've seen somebody spin with rubber bands around balls. They just kind of roll it around the floor, because that twisting motion spins the yarn. Again, there's no really wrong way of doing it. The other book that I love, and it's really more of a booklet, is Hand Spindles by Betty Hochberg. This is $10. I can't believe it's $10. This is like a master's thesis on all the different types of spindles from lots of different places. And there is also little notes and hints about spinning on a drop spindle. Everybody's got their own ideas and thoughts and ways. Other questions? Is anybody trying this and getting stuck and need a little bit of troubleshooting? Or is very experienced at spinning and knows of the pitfalls that I'm forgetting that people generally run into?
If folks want to spin for you, would you like them to just unmute and go for it at this point?
Sure.
All right. Oh, and you have a question in the chat. Is the secret to thinner yarn in the draft?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because your yarn isn't going to spin. It's not going to get any thinner than this unless you draft it. So however thick it is, if you have a bat that's twisted up, I can twist this. That's not getting any thinner. If you want thinner yarn, you are in control of the draft. Absolutely, that's exactly where it lands. The secret of your final product, the secret of your final yarn and the thickness of your final yarn is in the thickness of the singles. It's all about the draft, baby. So that's why I said drafting is the most fundamental. It's kind of the easiest idea to get, and it's also the hardest skill to really hone in on. There's different types of drafting. What I showed you is called a short draft. I think it's a short forward draft. That's its own class. A worthy one. But so there's again, lots and lots of different ways of doing it. My goal here is to get you going, baby birds, at the nest. Off you go. That's the plan. If you are looking at spinning on a wheel, the mechanics are exactly the same. So here's my spindle. It's spinning around, it's spinning around, it's spinning around, it's spinning around. Here's a wheel. It just turned sideways. This is the bobbin that's spinning around. This is the quill on a great wheel. That's the only thing that changed, is it went from gravity fed to mechanically fed. And again, there's lots of different ways that wheel goes around, but that's the fundamental principle. Wheels that have flyers and are pedal, no, they don't have to be pedal driven. The first wheel that had a flyer, the first picture of it in Europe showed up in the 1400s, so they are period. But that is a magical piece of engineering that allows you to draft, and then you say, okay, put it onto the bobbin, and then you draft, and you kind of almost feels like you're feeding the wheel. It's like, okay, here you go. And it goes, oh, nom, 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 and sucks it up onto the bobbin. It's doing all of that work for you. So you don't have to stop and wind and then draft and then wind. You draft and you feed, and it automatically winds on. That's what that flyer does again. But the principle of drafting is exactly the same. If it's pulling too hard, if it's being, fiber monster and you need to loosen up your tension. Depends on the wheel that you have and all that sort of stuff. Quill wheels are the simplest type. That's kind of what a great wheel is. It's just, there's a giant wheel and you've got this little spike just whirring for all it's worth. Just going, ah! So what you're doing is you are spinning. It's actually flicking. Let's see. Here we go. Perfect example. This is actually This is designed to be held in the hand and flicked. So let me see if, there we go. Is this okay to be seen this way? Okay. So what's happening with this is every time it flicks off the end, it adds a little bit more twist into the yarn. That is what a quill wheel does. It's just doing it this way. That is exactly how a quill wheel works. It just flicks it off the end. And so you could use that with a, you know, this is a low whirl spindle is what this would be considered. And the neat thing about this type is that once you have enough wool on here or whatever you're spinning, once this gets heavy enough, you can take that off and your own wool becomes the weight. I think that's part of the reason why sometimes we find just the whorls and not the whole thing, because sometimes every once in a while you get really, really lucky and there is a piece of wood that exists in a bog or something like that. So my own personal take on history, you can make up your own. This is actually, again, like I said, you don't need to be fancy. This is a piece of, you know, leave it out to dry clay. I made my own whorl off of like a picture that I found. I just flattened it out. It's a disc. I wedged it onto a double pointing knitting needle with a piece of fluff. I just kind of wedged it right on there. And spindle. They don't have to be fancy at all. You can, and they're a lot of fun. Other spindles, any history, any, what do I do with this? What do I do with that?
So I have a fiber question.
Okay.
So you've talked about how like the fiber is locked into place once you let the twist creep up onto it.
Yep.
Is that just a wool thing, or if you had, say, you know, some cotton or a different kind of fiber, does it also work for that?
It's the same thing. That twist locks it in place. So what do you do? Actually, that put me in mind. What happens if, there we go. I had to find the one with the fluff still attached. So I've got lots of different projects that I'm just like donating to the cause. I'm like, whatever. So what happens if, oh no, now I've got this big, we call it a slub. I've got this big chunk in my yarn and I don't like that. What you can do is untwist it so the fibers are realigned to be flat, so there's no twist in it anymore, and draft that. Now remember, you still have to be further apart than that staple length. So if you need to untwist more, you can do that, and then you can draft that little piece out, and then you're going to then need more actual twist to hold it together, because thicker yarn needs less twist, thinner yarn needs more twist. Think about an ice skater. If their hands are really far apart, if their arms are really far apart, that's a thick yarn. They're not going all that fast. They don't need as much spin. They tuck themselves in. You need a lot of spin to hold that together. Or more spin anyways, more twist. So there you go. I had that big chunky slub in there, and that is now gone. But you have to go back and you almost have to, you have to fix it. You can't just strong arm it.
We have a question about supported spindles. When did those appear?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
The question was supported spindles, and when did those start to appear?
When do they start to appear? That's a really great question. Off the top of my head, I don't know. I would have to look that up. There are some that it's cultural as far as when they started as well. I've seen and how they're used. So there are some, there's a Tockley, there's a Russian supported spindle. I've seen them where they have little bowls. There was a woman had a little bowl and it had a notch in it. She tucked it into her belt and it was a little spindle like this, and that was her platform, and she could walk with it. Navajo spindles are about 4 or 5 feet long. That could be considered a supported spindle because you're rolling that whirl along the ground. That's thousands of years old. So it depends on what you call supported, and it depends on the culture when they showed up. Sometimes they were never preferred. If you're interested in supported spindling or spinning on a great wheel or a quill wheel, I would recommend supported spindles first because you need to learn how to draft one-handed. You don't have that tension with your other hand. The tension comes from that balance of having just enough twist down here to give yourself that tension you would normally have in this hand to pull on your on itself. So it's a balanced dance between keeping that twist going and wrapping it up, and so that it's a lot of fun to learn. It took me, I've been spinning for years, and I sat down, I'm like, I'm gonna get this. And I took some cotton and a Russian supported spindle, and I'm looking around to see where it is, and I don't know where it is, which means it's in a project bag, God knows where. And every day for a week, for like an hour, I sat and I dropped it, and the yarn broke, and the yarn didn't break, and it was a hot mess. And all of a sudden it clicked and went, oh. A lot of it is trial and error. That was the other thing. If you are, okay, you're doing park and draft, and okay, and I've got this, and all of a sudden I go, oh no, I broke it. No, you didn't. Just put it together and pretend, and you might need to support it a little bit, but just pretend that it never happened, because fluff is stupid. It doesn't know. And if there's a section that you really don't like and you feel like, you know what, this whole section needs to be excused from life, what you can do is undo that part. So untwist it. All right. And you want to get an end of fluff. And, you know, an inch if you can. Sometimes it has a little bit of fibrousness that doesn't want to leave. Okay, so there we go. So we got some nice fluff. And you stick some other fluff on it, and you pretend that they've never left each other. And oh no, you guys have always been together. What? I don't know what you're talking about. And you don't let them know what's going on. You just spin them together, and the yarn doesn't know what it's doing, and it just trusts what you're doing. It just thinks, oh yeah, we've always been together. Hi, how's it going? But that's also why I love wool when you're starting, because if you try to do that with silk, silk does not like itself. It does not like when you do that to it, because silk doesn't have, wool has, you ever see those commercials for cream rinse for conditioner? And this was a while ago, so where they had, it was a barbed wire, and oh, look at how awful this hair is, and it just had all these barbs kind of sticking off of it, and they put the cream rinse on it, it would all slide back into niceties. Those barbs are actually what's helping your yarn to hold together. So if you get something that doesn't have that, like silk or like plants don't often have a lot of that, you need to fight it a lot more, meaning it needs more twist to hold together. Other questions or thoughts or ideas, or hey, what if this happens? You don't have any now, but you come up on it, please always ask. I'm happy to help. Most spinners and fibery bits I know are happy to help as well, because we're all just jazzed that, yay, you're playing. Mostly not.
So we have another question here.
Yes.
What is your favorite spindle? Or what spindle is your favorite?
Oh man, I like this one because I like them for different reasons. They're like my kids. This one taught me a totally new skill, because this one I flick and I spin this, but I never let go of it. That was my newest thing. That was kind of neat. I like the Turkish spindle because it makes a center pull ball for me. Makes my life easier. I like this one because it's curvy. I have my first spindle up on the shelf. I dropped it so many times it looks like a ship's wheel. And somebody made it out of resin. It's got these little spokes, and I dropped it a lot. I killed it. The poor thing's dead, but it's sitting in state on my shelf. And I actually have my spindle that was made for me for my launch. So they didn't ask is there a medallion, they asked if there's a spindle. So they're all a lot of fun. If you're going to make very light yarn, very fine yarn, or if you want to make thread, use a light spindle because that thread has to support the weight of that spindle. Heavier spindles are better for thicker yarns and or for plying. So I tend to spin stupid thin. So I like lighter spindles.
And is there a spindle that's easier to use? Like, what's a good beginner spindle?
The only thing that I would suggest, 2 or 3 things. It doesn't matter whether you use top or bottom whorl. Things that make it easier for new people. If you are using a top whorl spindle, meaning the whorl's at the top, it's easier if there's a notch in it, or if it has flat sides so that it won't slip all the way around. This is also really nice because when it drops, it doesn't roll. Other nice features for spindles for beginners, if they are square, they are automatically rim weighted, or they may just have a heavier weight on them, or there are some that are thinner in the middle and they come out. I've seen other ones that have weights on the outside. Those are rim weighted spindles, and what they do is it just helps that spindle spin longer, so you don't have to keep stopping and spinning, stopping and spin, stop and spin. So those make it easier for beginners. As far as what's the one right spindle for all spinners to begin with, I give you guidelines. You go play. It's like, what's the best shirt to wear for your first day of school? Well, probably one that covers your top. It's the same kind of thing. If it does the job, awesome. If you're looking for a handmade spindle or somebody's going to make a spindle for you, that is lovely. Please make sure, and this is a way of testing it. Let's say you come up with this really neat, cool spindle idea, design thing, and you want to see if it's going to spin consistently. Put the hook, turn it upside down, and put the hook on the palm of your hand, and spin it, and let it spin around in a loop in your fingers. And if it doesn't wobble crazily all over the place, you're going to be pretty good. You want it to spin. You don't want it to be doing this on you. But usually, if it's commercially made spindle, they've already checked for that. Don't you worry. They got you.
We just had a comment saying, thank you for clarifying so many fundamental concepts in such a short time.
You're very welcome.
Yay!
I do try, and I was really trying not to ramble, so yay! Because I'm real good at that. But yeah, anytime you happen to see me at an event, but I work Saturdays and events are stopped. So just, see me on social media or any of us, honestly. I'm just happy that you're playing. Drop me a line. Bug me. It's great. And my little one's getting hungry. You want to bring him in, hon? Sure. Because that's all he wants. He just wants to be near me. Hi.
Yeah, it's expiration time for the babies.
You want to say hi? There you go. That's all. I just wanted to say hi. Yep. Okay. Issue solved. What's that? be shy now. There you go. You better now.
Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm thrilled and delighted to do this. Thank you for coming and playing. I'm excited.
Yeah. Would you like me to stop recording at this point since we're kind of more casually chatting?
If we're done, we're done. It's all good.
All right. Well, before I hit record to stop, I just want to say thank you once again, Caera. It was really fantastic. I learned so much. I need to go and grab a spindle and get spinning. Thank you.
Yay! Come to the spin side. We have cookies.